Hello again. In this lecture, we're going to go through a few of the ways you can apply what you've learned to the withdrawal phase of your retirement calculator. And we're going to go through some case studies just so you can see some examples and the ways that you can use and change some of the assumptions and different inputs into this calculator. So here we are back at the homepage of mycalculators.com. And again, to get to the calculator, we're going to click on Retirement Calculators. And once we get to the menu, we're going to focus on the combo retirement calculator. So here we are at the retirement calculator again, and we're hoping that you have made these calculations for yourself, that you've done this for your scenario as well. But just to show you the versatility of this calculator and why we rave about it so much, we want to go through a few examples with you. And these will be some fairly typical examples. We'll look at a 30-year-old all the way to a 70-year-old who's already retired. And we're going to make a couple of assumptions here. First, we're going to assume that they have a life expectancy of 85. And we're doing this for consistency reasons. And we're assuming that either they'll live until 85 or they'll at least do something like what we touched on in a previous lecture. They have purchased a relatively low-cost annuity that starts paying them the income they need if they're fortunate enough to live past the age of 85. So something like that, which is the route some people are going. So that's the assumption we're going to make. And then one more is that they're going to retire at age 67. So retire at age 67, life expectancy of 85. And for all of those examples, that means that they'll be spending 18 years in retirement. And let's look first at a 30-year-old. So a 30-year-old retiring at age 67 has 37 years until they retire. And let's say average annual interest rate they can earn is 7%, and average annual inflation rate, we'll keep it at 3% for right now. And they want to live on $40,000 annually in today's dollars, which, as you know, that number will rise with inflation. But in today's dollars, they want to live on $40,000, and they'll leave $0 left when they're 85. So solving for that means that a 30-year-old in 37 years needs to accumulate $1.585 million, $1,585,000. And so that's a 30-year-old. Let's look at a 40-year-old. A 40-year-old has 27 years until retirement, and we'll leave all the other assumptions the same. And they need less. They need to accumulate $1.18 million. And that means that they have 10 less years to accumulate a lower amount, because inflation has 10 less years to add up, and they're still drawing out for the same amount of years, but because of inflation impacts and the amount of time they have to accumulate that, it decreases there. And then 17 years for a 50-year-old, and all the other assumptions the same, says that they need to accumulate in 17 years when they retire $877,000. And then for a 60-year-old, they have 7 years until retirement, and they need to accumulate $653,000. And then here's another one, a 70-year-old, if they retired at age 67, well, they have 0 years until they retire. And if they're already 70 and we're assuming a life expectancy of 85, then they have 15 years in retirement. So this would be an example of somebody who's already retired, and it shows them what they should have right now in order to live with the assumptions they've made, the drawing out $40,000 annually. And that would be meaning that they should have right now $465,000, give or take a few, accumulated right now. And if they don't, well, that's where they can really focus on the next section, which is the accumulation part, or they can start making some changes. So let's look at the versatility of this calculator. Let's say, keep it the same example, they're age 70 and they only have, I don't know, $350,000 accumulated. So they're going to need to make some changes. And let's say that they say, okay, well, we only need to accumulate, or we only need to live on and withdraw about $30,000 annually. How does that change our numbers? Okay, right there. That's all they need to do. I mean, that's a lot. They now need to live on $10,000 less each year, but that's a very doable thing. They went from a number that they didn't necessarily think they would be able to get, or that they certainly didn't have at right now. And now, by just saying, okay, well, we can look at our budget, we can adjust it, spend a little less, and withdraw only $30,000 a year for the next 15 years. And now we've got it. We have this $350,000, and that works out just fine for us. So that's what we need to do. Okay, so let's look at a 60-year-old and what they can do. They have 7 years until retirement, and like we showed before, 18 years in retirement, and we'll assume the same $40,000. So again, the $653,000 they need to accumulate. And they might think, well, that might be a little tough for us. What can we do? Well, okay, maybe we can earn a higher interest rate. So let's assume that they can earn actually 9% interest on their accounts during retirement. So that goes from $653,000 that they need to accumulate to now $571,000. It's starting to get much more doable for them. Or let's say, okay, they enjoy their jobs. They're okay working another 2 years so they're now going to retire at age 69. And that means that they have 9 more years until they retire. And now that they're retiring at age 69, they will have 16 years during retirement. So that takes their retirement number from 571,000 to 564,000. And you might be saying, well, wait a second, it only dropped $7,000 and I'm delaying retirement by 2 years. Well, the thing to remember here is they actually have 2 more years to accumulate that number. So rather than in 7 years they have to accumulate $571,000, now they have 2 additional years. They have a total of 9 years to accumulate a little less, $564,000. So this is a very doable number for them, and they think they can do that. So now let's look at the 50-year-old, and here's where they needed to accumulate $877,000, and same assumptions, living on withdrawing $40,000 a year. And they think, well, that's very doable. We actually think we can accumulate more. So they think, you know what? We want to and feel that we can withdraw $60,000 a year when we retire. So what does that bring the number to? It's going to go higher from $877,000 that they need to accumulate up to $1.3 million. Okay, now we're getting into some high territory. So what can they do to get there? Well, they might be on track for that, but if they're not, they can make different changes. They might say, well, we think we can earn a 10% rate of return, so now we only need to accumulate $1,081,000. Or, you know what, inflation really hasn't had the impact that we thought it would, and we're comfortable going down to 2% inflation while still earning that 10% rate of return. Now we only need to accumulate $858,000 in 17 years, and we have that for the 18 years in retirement. So again, this just shows you the versatility of this calculator and how many different changes you can make, especially as time goes on, not even right now today, but 5 years from now, when different things are happening to your life and when you're earning more or less on your accounts, or you're starting to withdraw more money, or you think you're on track for less money. It just shows you all of these changes that you can make. So here's the 40-year-old, and the assumptions that we're making are the same here as with the other ones. And a 40-year-old has 27 years until retirement. And when you start talking about 27 years and up of compounding, as we've talked about before, that can be huge. So this 40-year-old is actually let's say that they're an avid investor and they've had a pretty good track record, and they're investing in US stocks, and they've really done very well, and they think that they're going to be able to keep this up for a long time. So they're outside of the norm, and they can actually earn a 15% rate of return. And you might think, well, that's crazy. 15% is crazy. And in our experience, we're here to tell you that some people actually can do it. And we work with plenty of people that prove that. And we're not saying that you should assume that. It's always up to you and your own calculations. But there are some people who can safely do that. And let's assume that this 40-year-old can do so. And they have 27 years until retirement, earning a 15% rate of return. And let's also say that they think that they'll want to withdraw $75,000 each year. So what's their retirement number going to be? Well, it'll be $1.37 million, $1,376,000 that they need to accumulate, but they have 27 years to do it. Now, in the next section, we'll go over how somebody like this might go about accumulating that and how they'll be able to adjust and make changes along the way. But this is showing you the withdrawal phase of your financial life. And for this person, they have 27 years to accumulate this amount, earning 15%. So I would bet at a 15% earnings rate that they're going to be able to do that. And finally, let's move on to the 30-year-old. And a 30-year-old has a lot of time until retirement, 37 years in this example. And there are really a lot of things, a lot of choices that they can make that will have a big impact on their retirement. They can do a lot of things to really amass a large amount during their retirement if they plan right, if they save, and if they compound it at a decent rate. And just to show you some of that impact and some of the choices that they have, let's say that they're, as a 30-year-old, they're saying, you know what, I don't want to work until I'm 67. My dream, as is everybody's dream, but is to retire early. And they're 30 years old, so they actually have some room to move on that. So they're saying, you know what, I want to retire when I am 62. So they have another 32 years until they retire. And if they're 62, that means that they're going to have 23 years in retirement. Well, to do so, that means that they are going to need to accumulate a little bit more in a shorter amount of time, in 5 less years. So instead of needing to accumulate the 1.58 million that they needed to before by the time they're 67, they now need to accumulate 1.6 million 5 years earlier by the time they're 62. So that's going to be a little more difficult, but they have a lot of time to do so. They can play around with how much do you need to live on annually component and say, I would rather retire earlier and will live on less money annually in order to do so. So they might say, well, if I want to retire that 5 years earlier by the time I'm 62, I will only withdraw $30,000 each year when I retire. So that brings the retirement number from 1.6 million down to 1.2 million. That's a 25% drop just by decreasing their budget a little, as we showed with a previous example. And they can make these decisions early. I realize a lot of 30-year-olds aren't going to necessarily know exactly what they want to do, but it just goes to show you that you can make all these different assumptions. You can make all these different calculations and see how to play around with them for your specific situation. We can't begin to show you what you're going to do, what each one of our students are going to do specifically, but that's why we want to extensively go over what all of the details of this calculator are and all of the different changes you can make, because I know that your specific calculation is going to be different from the one that we're showing you here among the countless examples we're showing you. But we're doing this for a reason. We're showing you all of these different calculations. We're spending so much time on this calculator and in the next lecture, another calculator, to show you how many different changes you can make to your retirement plan as time goes on, as situations change, and that you can do this on your own for free. So get to know it again, get a little more comfortable with it, and you'll see how much fun it can really be.